thousands of instances of voter fraud every year, every election year, and the mainstream media say there's no indication of widespread voter fraud. That's a lie. There is indication of widespread voter fraud. There are indications that people are on the voter rolls that shouldn't be there. There's indication of people voting 2 and 3 times. There's indication of people submitting fraudulent ballots. That stuff is going on all over the country. And unfortunately, the Democrat Party likes cheating because they believe in machine politics, so cheating doesn't matter to them. So they don't want people to have voter IDs, and they don't want any way of checking to be sure that a person is casting an authentic vote. They want everybody to be able to vote because that way they can bring in dead people and bring in illegal immigrants and bring in people who voted already in another county, just whatever they need to do to win. You know, communists are no different. You know, communist countries have elections. You know that, don't you? They do. But they don't care because the outcome's already predetermined. And that's what the Democrat Party is trying to do to our country. They're trying to create elections that are already predetermined for them to win. In fact, what they really are trying to do is create a one-party state. And if they can get a one-party state, folks, where they can do whatever they want to do, destroy the filibuster, change all the rules, ultimately change the Constitution, which is what they are trying to do, by the way, with this election law that they are pushing, because the Constitution of the United States puts elections in the hands of the states, not in the hands of the federal government. This is an unconstitutional power grab. But once again, they don't care. When power is your God, anything goes. Anything goes. And sadly, that's what the Democrat Party has come to. They are corrupt. Frankly, the whole philosophy of their party is evil. It is ungodly. It is anti-Christian. It is anti-Bible. It is anti-American. People are always running around talking about homophobes and Islamophobes. No, our problem in our country today is Christophobes and Biblophobes. The whole LGBT community are made up of God haters. Those activists are made up of God haters, Bible haters, Christian haters. That's the real prejudice. That's the real bigotry that is happening in our country right now. And whether people realize it or not, they are trying to stoke up racial division. But the real division in the country is not racial. The real division in the country is spiritual. You just got a bunch of black Democrats who are Christians who don't know their heads from a hole in the wall, and they don't realize that they're being led around by the devil in this Democrat Party situation, being made to put their imprimatur on homosexuality and transgenderism and same-sex marriage. And even in Cambridge, Massachusetts, dominated by Democrats, they've got polyamorphous marriage. Where 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people can get married as a group. This is the Democrat vision for our country. And all you black Christians out there who keep voting for this stuff, you're going to answer to God one day for it. Because you are helping to bring this country under the aegis of the devil. Not that he hasn't already had influence. He always has, of course. But you are helping to subsume this country under the leadership of Satan. Because that's exactly what the Democrat Party now represents, Satan. I'm not saying they're Satanists, because a lot of them don't believe in the spiritual world. They don't believe Satan exists. He just loves that, because that way he can lead them around anyway, and they don't even know they're being led around. I mean, I don't know whether you heard Nancy Pelosi talking about George Floyd like he was some kind of exalted saint. He sacrificed for us. Oh, are you kidding me? I mean, look, I have nothing against George Floyd. It's tragic that the man died. But you can't make a lie out. You can't make the truth out of a lie. George Floyd was a drug-addicted, drug-addled, full of methamphetamine, full of fentanyl. He was passing counterfeit money, and he got caught up in a situation where he was the unjust victim of a cop who's now been convicted of having killed a man. And that is tragic. But I'm not putting any pictures of George Floyd up like he's some kind of hero. I mean, what is wrong with people? Because what that means is you have no standards at all. In fact, all you really need to do is paint yourself as a victim of the system, and suddenly you're like Martin Luther King. I mean, this stuff is insane. I'll tell you, I was watching one of these documentaries on crime, because I like watching these crime documentaries when the bad guys are caught. Okay, I like seeing justice at the end of the process. And these two kids, high school kids, broke into somebody's home, and one of their classmates, I don't think they knew him, but one of their classmates at the school was there, and the family had a firearm in the home to defend themselves. And when the kids broke in, they climbed in through a window. They didn't think anybody was home, and he was there. He opened fire, injured one, killed another. But he probably saved his own life. They started a movement in the school putting the dead kid's picture on a T-shirt as if he was some kind of hero. And both, by the way, all black, all black. The kid who shot him was black. The kids who were breaking in were black, all black. But they turned not the kid who defended his home, not defended his life. Oh, he's horrible. He didn't have to do that. They were breaking into his home. But they put the kid who was doing the break-in on T-shirts and turned it into a movement. And, oh, he's an unjust victim. I mean, this is pathological. The kid was doing a house break. And here again, it's tragic that he lost his life. But he lost his life doing something he had no business doing. And the young man who killed him had every right to use lethal force because he had no idea what they would do to him if they were allowed to get in there and get control of the situation. Who knows? They might have said, well, you know, he's a witness. We got to kill him. But they turned the house, the home invader is now the hero. And the kid who shot him is, oh, he's a villain. He didn't have to kill him. He didn't have to shoot him. This stuff is pathological, folks. It's demonic is what it is. It's demonic. Okay. Believe it or not, that's not primarily what I had on my mind. But you can just deposit that one just as a kind of bonus. This past weekend, a 3-year-old kid was shot at a birthday party in Miami-Dade, Florida. 3 years old. I just last week talked to you all about Jaslyn Adams, 7 years old. This kid is 3 years old at a birthday party. And he is shot dead. Folks, Black Lives Matter wants to get all up in arms about a 13-year-old wielding a gun at 2:30 in the morning, firing off rounds. In a confrontation with police, the kid ends up dead, and they want to act like it's the end of the world. It's just oh, what injustice, what horror, what you know. The police are out trying to hunt down black men once again. I mean, but you know what they're going to say about this? Zero. Nada. Nothing. Which is why I say they don't care about black lives. That's a joke. Why are you all, some of you all, not all of you, but why are so many people, particularly black folks, Christians, buying into that mess? You won't find anywhere in the Bible that says Black Lives Matter. The Bible makes clear that all lives matter because God so loved the world. Everybody. That thing is nothing but a sham and a scam to manipulate people and get people all worked up over issues that they think can have political impact and keep people like slavish automatons voting for Democrats because the Democrats are going to save you from the racists. I can't imagine that racists could do any worse. I mean, I think the Democrats who claim to be the champions of racial justice, they're doing a great job helping black people die. Yeah, I said it, and I mean it just like I said it. They're killing black babies by the millions. 20 million black babies murdered since Roe v. Wade. 20 million. They're watching black children die, and they don't lift a finger. They don't say a word. They don't have anything to offer. And the infinitesimal, statistically insignificant, now not personally insignificant, but statistically insignificant number of black men who die at the hands of cops. Oh, that's the end of the world. They're killing us all. It's a bold-faced, contemptible lie. It's just not even true. But Bishop, I saw on the news. Yeah, because that's what the news wants you to think. I just looked at some of the data this morning. 44% of the people killed at the hands of police are white. Ever see any stories about that? Ever see any stories about white criminals dying in shootouts or killed by cops? No. But twice as many of them are being killed as are black people. You'd never know it. 44% of the police killings that happened in the course of a year, in the course of, I think it's 2019, I think it's the last data we have, Americans of European ancestry. 23% Americans of African ancestry. And the remainder scattered around with different groups or unknown. But mainly scattered around through different groups. Hispanic, Asian, etc., etc. It is not cops that are killing black people. It's black people who are killing black people. Now, I don't know what it's going to take for us to address that issue, but don't tell me you care about black lives and you ignore that, because you're a liar. You are a liar. You don't care about black lives. Either you're so stupid that you're caught up in the hype and you don't realize what the numbers actually are, and you don't pay any attention to that. You're just caught up in the emotion because the mainstream media shows you an incident, and then, that's it. See, it's an epidemic. But you know what's interesting? Nobody gets caught up in the death of a 3-year-old child, 6-year-old child. Because I remember one instance of 6-year-old last week, Jaslyn, 7-year-old. Nobody gets caught up in that. Nobody says, there's an epidemic. They're killing our children. Nope, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah, and I'm outraged by it. I'm outraged by it. Because this child, this 3-year-old, did nothing to anybody. He wasn't out in the street at 2:30 in the morning. He wasn't fighting a cop. He wasn't wielding a gun. He wasn't trying to get away from an arrest warrant. He's 3 years old, doing nothing to nobody, and he's dead. And why?
You know what? I've been talking and you all haven't been hearing me. That's terrible. Forgive me. I've got a checklist right in front of me, and if I don't pay attention to it, I'll miss something. And I missed something this morning. Wow, and you know what? What I had to say was so good. Oh, my goodness gracious. Thank God for my wife, because she just texted me and said, no sound. Oh, Lord. And you know what? I've been talking for 20 minutes, folks. 20 minutes. You all reach through the screen and shake me. But at any rate, look, let me just encapsulate what I just said. In Miami-Dade, Florida, a 3-year-old boy shot to death at a birthday party, and it says it sparks outrage. But you know what? There won't be any outrage. Black Lives Matter will be silent because they don't care. They simply do not care. They don't care about black lives. They care about any killing by a police officer that they can use for their political agenda. And guess what their political agenda is? Patrice Cullors announced it. They want to, we've heard defund the police, dismantle the police. They don't want to just defund the police and dismantle the police. They want to do away, she wants to do away with the criminal justice system. No, I'm serious, folks. That's her proposal. Do away with the courts, do away with police, do away with prosecutors, do away with prisons. Now, I know you think, you're kidding, right? I mean, you're kidding. No, I'm not. That's what she's proposing. That's what she wants to do. That's her answer. That's her solution. Because what they really want is not justice for black people. What they want is Karl Marx vision imposed on America. That's what they really want. And nothing could be antithetical to the interests of any American, no matter, regardless of the color of their skin. Nothing could be more antithetical to those interests than Marxism. As I've said, Marxism enslaves everybody. And what would she replace it with? Well, you know what she would replace it with. What she would like to replace it with is the Communist Politburo. And you know what the Politburos do and these communist governing bodies do? They just execute people who they don't like or who they think have they just order, give that person a first-class trial and then take them out back and shoot them in the head. Because we have a criminal justice system that is constitutionally required because every American is entitled to due process. Your freedom, your property cannot be taken away without putting you through a trial by a jury of your peers who determine your guilt or innocence and whether you are therefore, whether the society is therefore justified in taking away your freedom or taking away your property. But she doesn't want that. She would decide because she's so wise. She's so intelligent. She's so superior to the rest of us that she would decide. That's what communists always deteriorate into, totalitarianism. Once they get power, they're always worse than what they claim was so bad that they're replacing. I mean, why do you think we had so many people escaping from Cuba? Fidel Castro, he gave health care to the people. Why do so many people want to leave? Because Fidel Castro was nothing but a murdering brute. That's all. And while he may have freed Cuba from Batista, he took him out of the frying pan and put him into the fire. Because I dare say that Fidel Castro was far worse than Batista. Batista may have been corrupt. I'm sure he had his problems. But he wasn't running a totalitarian country. Castro implemented a totalitarian system that controlled everything and everybody, all the property, all the educational system. Everything was under one man's lifetime control. And that's what Patrice Cullors wants. So she says she's a trained Marxist. That means she's a trained totalitarianist. I mean, and look, folks, communism is satanic. It is satanic. I was saying this earlier. I wish you could have heard me. But communism is satanic. It is satanic. And if they are given their way, they would turn this country into a demonic, satanic country. And for those who think, well, America's already that way, no, America's not. America's not. America is still a godly country. But there are people trying to wrench that out of us. They're trying to, with everything they've got. I said our problem is not homophobia or Islamophobia. Our problem is Christophobia and bibliophobia. Coming out of the LGBT activists and coming out of these far leftists and coming out of the Democrat Party, they are anti-God and they are anti-American. And these people aren't interested in the death of this 3-year-old boy. They don't care. They could care less. The only death that matters to them is one that they can use for their own political benefit. And in the meantime, more children died. Last year it was Jaslyn Adams. Today it's this 3-year-old child at a Miami-Dade party. 30 bullets fired. And he's killed. I don't think anybody else was killed in the whole thing. Just like when Jaslyn Adams was in the car with her father wasn't killed, but she was. Because the people doing this stuff, see, it doesn't matter with the color of their skin. They happen to be black, but I could care less. They need to be locked up. You kill an innocent child, you need to go away, and you need to go away forever as far as I'm concerned. That police officer chasing that 13-year-old boy was chasing somebody who was already gang affiliated or gang involved, out shooting a gun at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. The children I'm talking to you about weren't doing anything to anybody. They're still innocent. Their lives are ahead of them. They could do anything with their lives. They could do wonderful things with their lives. But some thug snuffs their lives out. And it's happening across our country to young black men and others by the thousands. And I'm supposed to believe that somehow the police are the problem for the black community. I mean, that is a damnable, contemptible, ridiculous lie. It simply isn't true. I told you all earlier, but I don't think you could hear me. 44% of the police killings that happen in America happen against Americans of European ancestry. Only 23% are against Americans of African ancestry. Well, why don't you hear about the other 44%? Since that's 2/3 between the two, that's 2/3 with quote unquote white people. Why don't you hear about those? Because that narrative doesn't help. See, because that narrative would lead us to think, well, then I guess what's going on then? Police are doing a dangerous job. They're encountering dangerous people. And in some of those cases, in some of those encounters, the people they're encountering end up getting killed. In some cases, the police end up getting killed. It's the nature of the job. It is not racial. But you won't hear that played out. That you won't hear that statistic or see that statistic played out in the media because they don't want you to believe that. They want you to believe that police are skipping over white criminals and going to any black person they could find, innocent or not, and gunning them down. That's the image they're trying to paint. And I tell you what, it is so demonic, it is so ridiculous, it is straight out of the pit of hell. I had a police officer call me last week on my radio program and started telling me about what he's been going through. 22-year veteran. And the man broke down on the air. Because he said, you know, you try to do your job, you try to do it honestly, you try to treat people right, and you get hated for it. I imagine that's what that officer is thinking right now who shot that girl who was about to stab this other girl. He's thinking, I tried to save a life, and now I'm accused of having done something wrong. You know, somebody called me and also suggested on my radio program, called me and said, you know what, the police ought to take a moratorium and see how people like it. I'll tell you what, if they did, you talking about murder and mayhem, particularly in the inner cities of our country, it would be a bloodbath. It would be a bloodbath, folks. So, Black Lives Matter is not interested in black lives. They're interested, in fact, Patrisse Cullors just, again, announced, let's do away with the criminal justice system and replace it with what? Her, apparently. I mean, or some sort of communist construct. You know, Christians, particularly black Christians, have got to awaken to the fact that you're being duped and used and deceived. You can't buy into this mess. So, well, what do we do about police brutality? You deal with it case by case. But we stop this incessant nonsense that somehow the police are out hunting down black men. It's just not true. It's not borne out statistically, and you're being manipulated by the mainstream media to believe that. And when I share with you the data, people just, they glaze over because they don't want to hear it. They've been so brainwashed into believing, oh no, there's an epidemic of police killing black men, and that when you give them the actual data, they don't even want to hear it. See, because if you want to turn a society into a totalitarian culture and you want to rob people of their freedom, one of the first things that has to go is truth. Truth has got to go. Because truth doesn't matter. What matters is the narrative that promotes and advances the cause of Marxism, socialism, communism, totalitarianism. That's all that matters, not truth. And that's where we are right now. I told you, 10 million arrests, about 2 million black folks arrested in America. 2 million. It is a fraction of a percent of the many millions arrested that ends in the death of anyone, including a black person. You won't hear that, but that's the truth. Bureau of Justice Statistics. That is the truth. And they say, well, they're not reporting. Listen, the Washington Compost is tracking this stuff. And even they have to admit that what I'm telling you is true. Of course, they still want to promote the narrative. Yeah, but they're disproportionately killing black folks. Well, black people are disproportionately committing crimes. Oops. Oh, you're not supposed to say that. But it's the truth. And their victims are disproportionately, to the tune of about 96%, other black people. Somebody's got to say it. I mean, my goodness gracious. You got police officers out there trying to do a decent, honorable job in very dangerous circumstances, and every move is second-guessed, and they're turned into villains for simply trying to do what we as a society charge them to do. They didn't create themselves. They were created by society for the purpose of keeping law and order in our communities. And now they're the villains? It's ridiculous. All right, folks. I want to get to the word because, and I apologize to you all. That is completely my fault. Like I said, I got a checklist in front of me, and I should have gone down. I should remember not to use my memory. But I got a little button over here that I've got to push to make sure my mic is on. And it's usually on anyway. But in this particular instance, I turned it off. And then came on this morning and forgot to turn my mic on and talked to you for 20 minutes without a microphone. Proof positive that all human beings are flawed, including yours truly, and I'm happy to admit it. But to God be the glory for his grace and his mercy. Thank you all for sticking with me. Okay, let's get to the Gospel of John, shall we? Let's get to the Gospel of John. Now look, we're going to finish up the 17th chapter today. Wow, we made some progress here in the Gospel of John. We're already chapter 17. We're about 2/3 of the way through the book. Okay, let's begin at the 14th verse. Now, we covered some of this before, but I want to review a couple things, and then we'll get on to conclude it. It says in the 14th verse, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. So I expect people in the world, I don't mean people in the world meaning every human being, I mean people who buy into the wicked system of things. I expect them to hate me because I'm preaching a different worldview. I'm preaching a biblical worldview. So I expect those folks to hate me. I say all lives matter because that's a biblical worldview. Oh, you can't say that. What's wrong with you? You're a sellout. No, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. And my identity is in Christ Jesus, not in the color of my skin. Not in my ancestral background, but in my spiritual background. And my spiritual background is I'm a child of God. I come from God. I am with God. I'm going to God when I leave this earth. That is my eternal identity. That is who I am. I will not be limited by being defined by the color of my skin or the ancestry, the ancestry that is part of my background. I will not be defined or limited by that. I know that. I'm aware of it. I study it. I look at it. I read it. It's interesting to me. I'm a member of Ancestry.com. I've done the genetic studies and all of that and know my genetic background and all of that. But that's not ultimately who I am because this flesh is going to depart. I am going to remain. I'm going to drop this robe of flesh and rise to seize the everlasting prize. And there is no race in heaven, and there is no race in the kingdom of God. I don't care. I expect it. Jesus said, beware when all men speak well of you. He said, because that's the way they spoke of the false prophets who came before you. I expect it. I expect people to not like me because of the stands that I take. And I'm going to take them until the day I leave this earth. My heels are dug in. Let's go on. 15th verse, Jesus said, I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. In other words, we're supposed to be in the world. Christians shouldn't be involved in politics. Shut up. That's stupid. Jesus said, I do not pray to take them out of the world. God wants us in every dimension of life. He wants Christians in politics. He wants Christians in business. In fact, I'm convinced right now that these major corporations all over the country are discriminating against Christians, and somebody's got to do something about that. Believe me, that's on my agenda, because I believe as a Christian, we are being told, you better shut up. Don't bring that Bible-believing nonsense, because we're too busy hung up on transgender and homosexual issues, and that's what we love. We don't love God. We don't love the Bible. We don't love Christianity. We love homosexuality and transgenderism, and you Christians, shut up, or you won't be promoted, or you'll be fired, or you won't be hired. I really believe that's the message the corporate world has sent to the Christian community, and we better be aware of it, and we better do something about it. And we need a president who will do something about it. This Joe Biden won't do anything about it because Joe Biden's an idiot. I mean, he's a demonic idiot. The man's not, his faculties are not there. Look, Joe Biden is not a Catholic. Joe Biden is a nothing. And when I say nothing, I don't mean nothing as a human being. But he's not, that's a joke. Joe Biden's not a Catholic. That's nothing but a mantle. That's nothing but a label he wears to give him some kind of credibility. He could care less about the Catholic Church or its teachings. Care less about what it teaches about marriage. And by the way, I won't even get off into this Pope because he's another problem right now too. Yeah, I said it. And I've got license to say it because I've got many Catholic friends who basically have denounced this Pope and said this Pope is not a man of God. This Pope is a Marxist. Don't blame me, blame them. and Joe Biden has bought into it too. I mean, they say he was a moderate. And at one time, he talked more like a moderate, talked more like a centrist. He's not a centrist. Joe Biden is, he has sold out to Marxism. And by the way, I'm so glad I get a chance to say this because I was planning to say it. And because of the glitch in getting started this morning, well, whatever. I really believe that we need to do a thorough audit of every person in this country, like Patrisse Cullors, who identifies openly as a Marxist, and find out what their ties are to Communist China, because it may be that these people are traitors to our country because they have more affinity for a communist dictatorship like the Chinese Communist Party than they do for the United States of America. I want to know, is Patrisse Cullors getting any money from Communist China? Is she consorting with them? Is she talking to them? Are they talking to her? She said we are trained Marxists. Who trained her? Who trained her? If you're a trained Marxist, I want to know who trained you. Did the Communist Party of China train you? Did they send people? Did they pay for your training? Did they send you to Communist University? See, I think we've got a major national security problem in our country with people who I think feel more affinity to Communist China, Cuba, Vietnam, any communist nation you can think of. Right now, China is sitting at the top of the communist heap. And I think the communists all around the world are now taking their orders from them, just like they once took orders from Stalin and Lenin. That's right, they did. They did. Communists around the world look to Stalin and Lenin for their orders, for their marching orders. Is Patrisse Cullors looking to Xi Jinping for her marching orders? I mean, I think it's a legitimate question, don't you? I mean, if you identify as a communist and a Marxist, it seems to me that you would feel in some way loyal to, beholden to, an affinity for the highest communist authority in the world, and that would right now be Xi Jinping and the Communist Party of China. Well, that's a major national security threat to the United States of America. And we need to find out just what's going on. And that's not McCarthyism. That's common sense. You don't want people running around in our country, particularly people with influence, whose loyalty is to an entity that is our enemy. Period. Now, I'm not saying you go round people up and put them in concentration camps or any silliness like that, because that's what the left will say. Yeah, Bishop Jackson advocated rounding people. No. I'm saying you got to investigate and find out what substantive connections are there, and how do those connections potentially bear on our national security. I think that's a perfectly legitimate concern that every American ought to have. We're going to have it about Antifa, because here again, they're Antifa's not anti-fascist. Antifa's pro-communist, and they're totalitarian in their outlook. I wouldn't trust those people as far as I could throw them. Do you all remember there was a time in our country when this saying, and I may not have it exactly right because it probably has several iterations, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Americans used to think that way. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the left, the colleges, the universities. Now, if I don't agree with what you say, I will stop you from saying it. Big tech, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, all of these knuckleheads, they are anti-American in their outlook. They don't have a classical First Amendment individual liberty worldview. They've got a kind of a totalitarian worldview, and these big tech people don't have the sense to realize that if these totalitarianists, these Marxists ever took over, they'd be the first to get their heads lopped off. It always goes that way. The intelligentsia, the intellectuals, they think, the wealthy, they think, oh, I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to work with these folks. And they're the first ones to get executed because they're a threat. They might start to think differently. They got too much power, too much influence. Get rid of them. Happens every time. It's called purging. They purge all the strong people so they can elevate the weak people who are then beholden to them for their position. That's the way it works. But these idiots don't have enough sense to know that. Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm almost out of time here. Let's go to verse 16. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Praise God, and I'm glad of it. I'm not of the world, folks. I live in this world. I have a physical body like everybody else, of course. But I'm not of the spiritual tenor of this world. I'm of a different spiritual tenor. Look, any dead fish can float downstream. It takes a live salmon to swim upstream. I'm a live salmon. So are you. If you're watching me, you're a live salmon swimming upstream. It says, sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. Folks, the word is cleansing. See, when we get into the word like this, it's like taking a spiritual shower. Wow. Well, that's right hot off the Holy Ghost presses. Reading, studying, meditating in the word is like taking a spiritual shower. It doesn't cleanse you on the outside, but it cleanses you on the inside. It says, sanctify them, set them apart, make them holy by your word. Your word is truth. It says, as you sent me into the world, I've also sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they may be sanctified by the truth. Jesus is sanctified. He is holy. He is completely set apart from this world's mess. All these people running around, these Hollywood folks making movies about Jesus as like he was a man, he did this and he did that. Or he was only a man, I should say. He was a man. He still is a man. He's the God man. But he committed this sin, he committed this sin, and he did this and he did that. All this blasphemous stuff. No, Jesus was sanctified in the earth. And of course, he remains sanctified as the precious Son of God, the King of kings and the Lord of lords. But he was sanctified in the earth. He never committed any sin, and therefore he is able to sanctify us who have committed sin. I tell you, Jesus is the best thing that ever happened to this world, and he's the best thing that could ever happen to you or to me. Now, I know some of the people watching, so those of you of a different mindset, you forgive me, but you'll understand why I say this. Some of the people watching hate me, hate God, hate Jesus, hate the Bible, and hate everything we represent. But I say to those who think that way and feel that way and are monitoring me because you're hoping I'll say something that you can then put out and say, here's another crazy thing that Bishop E.W. Jackson said. I hope that you understand that Jesus died for you the same way he died for me. And he loves you the same way he loves me. And he wants you the same way he wants me. And the only thing standing between you and salvation is not your sin, not your homosexuality, not your transgenderism, not your prostitution, not your drug addiction. None of that is standing between you and God. What's standing between you and God is your refusal to accept the sacrifice that the God the Father sent for your sins. And if you will accept that sacrifice, the Lord will cleanse you of your sin, and he will receive you as his child. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you hate me. I don't care how much you don't like me and what I stand for. You come to Jesus, and I guarantee you'll get a whole different perspective on who I am and what I stand for. Because he will give you a new perspective. Because once you get a new perspective on him, you'll have a new perspective on all of those who actually represent him and speak for him. And I'm one of them. So it's been great. Again, my apologies, folks, for the glitch. That's completely my fault. I take full responsibility for that. There's no engineer who messed up or anybody else. That was my mess up. But I will remember now to go through my checklist, because I have a number of things I have to do to get ready. And I will remember to go through my checklist and not simply go from memory and then forget to do something. I'm sitting here. Here's my mic right here. But if I don't push the button to make sure that the mic is open, I'm just speaking into the air and you can't hear a word. So you all pray for me that we'll get this together and everything will be done efficiently, effectively, and with excellence, because that's what God deserves and that's what you deserve as far as I'm concerned, coming from me, and that's what we'll try to deliver to you. All right, look, I'll be on at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on American Family Radio. I guarantee the mic will be on then because my studio is in control of the mic. And in the meantime, just stand up, step up, speak up. Don't back down. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't give up on our country, no matter how much craziness you hear or see, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.